Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Starseeds and Lightworkers podcast here in Quantum Portals. My name is Crystal, and tonight we have a very interesting conversation with a Mr. Preston Dennett. And Preston is a longtime UFO researcher. He has been an author of many books. And tonight he is going to be presenting with us a topic that we really don't usually talk about. And this is why I wanted him on the show because we often talk about UFOs and we talk about, some of the main characteristics of what people experience when in contact with UFOs. But this is different because tonight he's going to be talking with us about schoolyard UFOs. And a lot of times when you watch UFO shows, we don't really look at, the kids, you know? And this is a particular topic because unlike adults who might have an edge to play or have sort of like something that they're looking to do, children usually, I mean, yes, children can make things up here and there, they have imaginary friends, but usually when children see something, it really is what they're seeing, and we don't really give them enough credit. And I think that children, for the most part, will talk about something that they're seeing. And what's also interesting with children is that children can see things a lot of us adults really take for granted. Like we don't even bother to look. So in terms of, like, let's say spiritual or different types of things, children, we often sort of disregard them. So tonight's topic is going to be quite interesting because we're going to be taking it from a child's perspective, and also how I guess we treat the situation when the people who are the experiencers are kids. So very interesting topic, and I'm looking forward to diving in tonight with Mr. Preston Dennett. Hi, Preston. How are you doing tonight?
Very good. Hope you're doing well too.
I'm perfect. That's great. So, you've written a lot of books. You have been a researcher for a very long time. Can you tell us how you got involved with UFO research on your side?
Yeah, it was kind of involuntary, really. It wasn't something I was looking for, and I didn't believe in UFOs. In fact, I was sure they weren't real
Okay.
because I was very materialistic, I guess, kind of. I mean, I've always been a spiritual guy, but I just didn't think UFOs were real because I knew a lot of astronomy, and the stars are really far away. I mean, they are so far away. It just didn't seem feasible to me that we would be visited. And if we were, wouldn't this be taught in schools? Wouldn't people be talking about it? Wouldn't this be taken seriously? And so forth. And even when I was 13 years old and my brother came running into the house, real excited, my older brother Mark, saying he'd seen a UFO, I just kind of dismissed it. That all changed. I was very fortunate, Crystal. I was 21 years old and things changed for me. So I was still pretty young. It was 1986, November 17. I'll never forget that day, as long as I live, because I was watching the news with my family. We're a pretty large family. There's eight of us, six kids. I don't think everybody was there, but the news came on, and there was either Tom Brokaw or Dan Rather, one of the main newscasters, and he's talking about this sighting over Alaska by a Japanese commercial airliner. They actually showed the pilot, Captain Kenju Torochi. Huge shout out to you, Mr. Torochi, for
Yeah.
changing my life. Because I thought, oh my God, this pilot is crazy. He must be imagining things. I decided he had misperceived it, and that he was seeing a reflection off the ice cap, which is the most ridiculous debunking explanation.
Yeah.
Doesn't even come close to explaining the facts. But long story short, that got me to ask my brother Mark what he saw, and he described an amazing encounter with a solid metallic disc with colored lights. He had witnesses with him, two of his friends, who, of course, would come over, so I knew them. They confirmed the story. That opened the door for me. I found out, oh my gosh, this was like such bad news for me. Uh, and looking back now, it's good news, but at the time it wasn't because it was very upsetting. I found out that I knew quite a few people who were having these encounters and keeping it secret from me. I was mad. I felt like they were kind of lying to me. But I found out like my soon-to-be sister-in-laws had both had encounters with actual beings. One with little blue beings, another with grays. Turned out my little sister would soon have encounters. She uh, didn't talk about it either. Uh, I had some really good friends who had encounters. One had missing time. I brought it up at work. I worked at a business office, and the lady whose desk was right next to mine. This amazing encounter. And she's like, you got to talk to my daughter. She's got these little beings coming into her room at night.
Oh,
Oh my God, you're kidding.
wow.
And another lady walks in and she described a classic missing time encounter. So yeah, it hit home for me literally. Uh, this took place over a period of months, but I joined MUFON within a year or so, Mutual UFO Network.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while to find them. I had no idea that people were taking this subject seriously. They were. I was a latecomer. I took MUFON's field investigator test, did very well, then started investigating my own cases. I really wanted to disprove the whole thing as swamp gas or
Yeah.
hallucinations,
Swamp gas.
which I couldn't do. So I started really investigating my own cases personally. I did 10 years of investigating to just really wrap my head around this. I wrote about 30 articles, put up my first book in 1996, UFO, what was it called? Yeah, UFO Healings,
Mhm.
and kind of haven't looked back since then, putting out
Okay.
a book on the average per year, one
Okay.
per year.
Wow, that's really amazing. And it's funny because you're talking about people in your family having experiences. And I know that's, I mean, we're sort of getting a bit off topic, but I know that sometimes it happens where people are in a family and family members and, generationally have a tendency to have experiences. Is this something that you feel that maybe was the case with your family? Like you had all these people in your family seeing this?
First, I didn't. I thought it was just a remarkable coincidence. I started having my own encounters, some pretty extensive ones. I mean, compared to anyone in the family, I'm probably the one who's had the most involvement with this. But when my nephew saw a UFO and had a humanoid come into his room, and then my other nephew, I thought, you know what? This does sound generational.
Mm-hmm.
Never got to ask my mom. She died quite young. Didn't know my grandparents really. Uh, and my father hated this subject with a passion,
Okay.
which was to me, now in hindsight, a big red flag.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do. I do think it's in my family.
Okay, that's very interesting. So it's interesting you're talking about your nephews, and so I assume that they were young kids when this was happening. So tonight we're talking about UFOs in the schoolyard. So what led you to write this book in particular? Was it your nephews? What happened?
It kind of came to me when I started to, I was looking for another article to write. I've written over 100 articles. There was a lot of UFO magazines back in the time when, before the internet,
Yeah.
and even after, there still is. And so I'm always looking for patterns in UFO activity. It's kind of one of the things I really enjoy doing. So I've done a lot of research in that particular area. And of course, in 1996, there was this crazy encounter in Rua, Zimbabwe. Probably still one of my favorite in all the world. With at Ariel Elementary School, where UFOs essentially came down, multiple UFOs. ETs got out. They walked up to a group of kids. There was some 200 kids on the playground. And there's, of course, now a movie out called Aerial Phenomena by Randall Nicholson, who describes this whole encounter in detail. But in a nutshell, yeah, these UFOs came down. ETs came up, talked to a few of the kids telepathically, gave them warnings about technology and the destruction of the environment. And I thought, wow, that sure is interesting. What an amazing case, because it's undeniable with that many witnesses. I thought, well, gosh, wasn't there another one at a school? And I racked my brain. I love this subject. I've got a really good memory for the UFO stuff. Maybe not, in music I do, but I can watch a movie and I'll forget it. I have to see it 3 times before I remember the ending. This stuff, no. And I instantly thought of Westall High School, 1966, April, Melbourne, Australia. UFOs came down, multiple, 400 kids saw it and teachers. I thought, well, gosh, I think there was another one. Where was that? And I'm like, that was Broadhaven, Wales. And I looked it up, 1976. Same darn thing. That was seen by, I think, about 15 or 8 or 15 kids. Later, it was found out that 2 or 3 school employees also saw the UFO. ETs came out. You can see the drawings of these kids. It's really special and amazing, very poignant. And then the dominoes started falling. I thought, oh my God, Opelika, Florida, Crestview Elementary School. And this is so interesting, Crystal, because it was 1 year to the day after Westall High School. So it was April 1967 in Florida. And I thought, okay, are there any others? And I started racking my brain because I thought, oh yeah, there's the Hillsdale College incident, which is technically a school. These are, youngsters, young adults, and same pattern. There was almost 100 people who saw that one, including police and school officials. And a lot of people don't know this, but that craft actually landed next to the school. This wasn't just a craft hovering around. It lasted for over an hour, closer to.
Wow. Okay, it landed near the school. Can you tell us about that? Oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah, Hillsdale, Michigan was having somewhat of a flap, a sort of wave of sightings, and you'll see that pattern in a lot of these cases. And this UFO showed up, a bright, glowing, disc-shaped craft, and the ladies in the girls' dorm saw it first and went rushing to the window, and they're crowding around it, and then the boys' dorm saw it as well, and then they're alerting school officials. They called the police. The police came over. One of them was like, "Should I shoot at it?" The other officer, the chief, said, "No, don't do that." And this darn thing, this is a very swampy area, which is important in considering what happened
Yeah.
next, because it landed way out there, and they wanted to go running towards it. It lifted back up, and it caused a big to-do. Uh, J. Allen Hynek of Project Blue Book showed up. Project Blue Book was still in effect, the government UFO study group. And he started interviewing students, and the press was on his butt right away that they wanted to know what was going on. And he very innocently said, I'm still doing investigations. We don't know what it is. It could be swamp gas for all I know. Well, that caused a furor. That's where the whole swamp gas term came from. And he was viciously attacked, called it his low point in his career. It led to him basically leaving Project Blue Book. That incident led to a congressional investigation, ultimately,
Okay.
uh, and the dissolution or the dissolving of Project Blue Book. But
Okay.
yeah, those are like the main famous schoolyard cases. I started looking at all the books I had, didn't really find anything in there. Thought, gosh, I just know this is a thing. I could feel it in my bones. So I started looking into the magazines and journals and newspapers. I'm very fortunate that from the beginning, I subscribed to the UFO news clipping service. There's a couple of them. So I started going through there and I hit gold. And I wept when I started reading these encounters from these beautiful, innocent, young children. This flew under everybody's radar, pretty much. So yeah, that's how I got involved in it, and I started just hitting case after case after case after case. I'm like, wow, no, people need to know about this. This is insane.
So basically, you've written the book. It's the Schoolyard UFOs, and you have written this book, and basically you have talked about the different situation, the different examples, and which one do you feel, in your opinion, is the most crucial? Like, which one do you feel is the most intense of all these stories? Like, why this particular story? You know?
Well, the ones that were I mentioned were the ones that really managed to break through the censorship of the press because there were so many witnesses, it was undeniable. I really like the Westall case. This is the case that keeps giving. And that's true of the Zimbabwe case as well. And that's the kind of ultimate case of this kind. But I found out that there's a few others. Ray Hernandez pointed me to a case in Colombia, which has all the same elements of this. To me, it's not one case really that is like, okay, this answers all our questions. It's the fact that there's over 100. And, my book covered the 100 cases. I found twice that now.
Okay.
So I really need to do a sequel or a
Yeah,
new
book
edition.
two.
Yeah, because I think it's the huge number of cases that really say there's something really profound, really important going on with these cases that I think holds some answers as to the ET presence on our planet.
Yeah, and I remember because I've been also following the UFO thing for a while, and I remember hearing about the Ariel School, and I think the reason why I'd heard about it is because I think John Mack, who was a Harvard professor, he was investigating it, and that led a lot of weight to the case. It's not just a bunch of kids making it up. And you mentioned also subsequently, since that time, we find out that there are also a lot of staff that also saw the UFO as well. So at this point, it's kind of like this is real, and this is happening. What do you, what would you say to John Mack if he were here today about the Ariel School? Like, what do you feel that he got out of it in terms of studying this particular case?
Well, he broke the ice, I think, and really opened the door, I should say, and let, I think, the world know that child witnesses should be taken seriously. Throughout history, early on in the 50s and 60s, children were kind of thought of as, unimportant. You know, children should be seen and not heard kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you mentioned earlier on that children actually do make really good witnesses. And I concur. I absolutely agree with that. Because adults look at reality and particularly the UFO phenomena, for lack of a better word, through the lens of their own belief system. Having interviewed people who are perhaps profoundly religious or atheist or what have you, it paints their perception. And they tell me, like, oh, I think I saw a demon, or they're not just saying blankly what they saw. Whereas children, a lot of them have never even heard of UFOs because half of these cases took place at elementary schools. These are our youngest kids. They're excellent observers because you can tell when they're lying pretty easily through a quick cross-examination. And they have an amazing capacity to learn and to really they move past fear. Because often they'll see someone who looks a little different and they don't freak out because of it because they don't really know. And I will say this, half the cases do involve teachers, half of them. So that's an important
Exactly.
point. But yeah, I think what John Mack really helped us along with is that we should listen to children because let's face it, contact often starts for people at a very young age. And I can tell you how many times I've interviewed people who said, this happened to me when I was a kid. I went running into my parents' house and I said, oh, honey, you just had a nightmare. So no, take your child's stories seriously. And you can tell because they're so emotional about it. Of these 100 cases, not one has been proven a hoax. There's no evidence of it. Several of these schools hold yearly uh, get-togethers, reunions about the event that they experienced, and it's affected them profoundly. Some become UFO investigators, some become physicists, some become teachers. And it was propelled by these early events that they had.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they were talking about. I remember seeing a documentary when they were talking about the Ariel School, and they had showed the video with the young girl. I'm actually showing it right now in picture. This young girl speaking with John Mack, and she was drawing, and they asked the children to draw the different UFOs that were there and all that. And he obviously is a tenured professor at Harvard in psychology, if I'm not mistaken. And so, if anybody knew how to question people, it would be John Mack. So I think he knows more, what he's doing. And they, in this in particular documentary, they contacted these kids, and so these kids now are, in their late 40s, abouts. And so they have their own families, they have their own lives. A lot of them have left, the country and have moved around. And so they sometimes come back to the Ariel School for reunions. And they said nothing's changed, like, no, I didn't make this up, or no, there, this is not a joke. And no, this is what we saw. And, and they say the same story again and again. And so it just seems that, like what you're saying, it's just that nobody took them seriously. But then that leads to the next question. Why the kids? Why land in the schoolyard? I mean, of course, I'm asking you the $1 million question, but really, we kind of get an idea of UFO landings when they're landing on a farm and they're going after people in a certain family and a certain bloodline, that kind of thing. We can sort of say, okay, maybe they're going after a certain blood type. Some women have had children, that kind of thing. That's one thing. But then why children, and why at the schoolyard? I mean, because we've talked about how people get have these experiences when they're younger, but you think they would just go to their room, but now they're going into a schoolyard with a bunch of kids. So in your estimation, why the schoolyard itself? Because we know that they're contacting kids in their houses and their families, but the schoolyard, why?
Yeah, well, let me start by answering this way or pointing this out. These cases are clearly intentional. This is not kids out at recess and perhaps a UFO flies by,
Okay.
because in 1/3 of these cases, these craft are landing or humanoids are being seen. These are very typically very low level sightings. The average UFO encounter is an anomalous light at night, and you see it for maybe a few minutes. This is something wholly different. These craft appear, perhaps somewhere on the horizon and come to the school and come down low and put on what I would call a display. So you'll see them darting around or landing or very long lasting encounters. So that's a significant point here. And I started looking at these cases. Let's go back to the 1966 case at uh, Hillsdale, Michigan College.
Okay.
When that happened, Jim and Coral Lorenzen, love those guys, heroes to the field. We wouldn't be where we are without them because they started the first UFO citizens study group. They said, you know what? We've had a lot of schoolyard cases. We're not sure why, but this is important. Could it be that they're preparing for open official contact or something along these lines? Now, Raymond Fowler was a very active investigator at that time and would be for decades to come. He's most famous perhaps for the Betty Andreasson case, the Allagash Four, but really has produced huge volumes of reports. And he said, mind you, this is March of 1966. Essentially, the year has just begun. And he says, I've got 15 unexplained cases so far this year, and 8 have occurred over schools. Something is going on here. John Keel chimed in, another really well-known researcher, and said, "Yeah, I've got some schoolyard cases too." And little did these investigators know, because Jim and Cora Lorenzen said, "This is going to happen again." It was 2 weeks later that the Westall High School case happened. So I started looking at the timing of these, because there was one at a high school in Massachusetts. And right after it put a display over the high school, it went straight to the nearby college and put a display over the college. I'm like, well, this isn't interesting and significant. And I started sort of mapping them out on location and time-wise. And I thought, you know what this looks like to me? This looks just like a concert tour. This looks like a book tour where a person who is selling their music or their book is going from city to city and spreading the word, so to speak. So I think what we're looking at is a very carefully orchestrated and incredibly clever publicity campaign. Because again, children are sort of seen and not heard, they're not taken seriously, yet they're going to become the movers and shakers of society in just a few years. And that's exactly what's happened. So now this has been a very, very effective method to sort of introduce humanity to the subject of extraterrestrial visitations. So I think that's what we're looking at here, essentially a publicity campaign, because they're not coming down and like picking people up or doing all kinds of crazy stuff in most cases. There are a few where people were essentially contactees after having their schoolyard encounter. That's pretty rare though. So I think ultimately this is, hello, how are you? We're real. Spread the word.
It's interesting because you brought up a good point. You're saying, well, there's like they're almost on a book tour and they're saying, here we are, spread the word, that sort of thing. Let me throw something at you and maybe you could sort of see where that lands. Now, some people have said that sometimes some of these these UFOs that are landing are not so much UFOs like aliens, but rather they are time travelers from the future, and that like a science fiction movie, they are trying to warn people not to get involved in too much of destroying the planet or the environment, or else the future will be destroyed. Do you feel that maybe they're also going after the children? Because you just said some of these children are going to be the movers and shakers of the future. Do you feel that maybe this is sort of what they're doing? Or maybe I'm asking too many questions here in one, but do you feel that maybe that's what it is? Because a lot of times what I've heard as well is that they will put images or they will put thoughts into the children's head, and they'll show images of destruction, which is what happened at the Ariel School. A lot of the kids said we had images and put in our head, and we saw destruction, and we saw nuclear, and we saw like the environment being destroyed and all that kind of stuff. Is it because they really do care, which I think they do genuinely care, or do you feel they could be something else? Like maybe time travelers that are saying, be careful, don't make this mistake. Let's try and save our future. I don't know. It's a little something out there.
Certainly, this is a theory that has been postulated many times because I think when we're suddenly confronted with something that's so beyond our understanding, we have to consider all these ideas. Like, who are these guys? Where do they come from? Why are they here? This is crazy. There's a cover up. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, a lot of fear and confusion. So it's been sort of a struggle to really get clarity with this subject. And clearly, the predominant explanation is that we're dealing with extraterrestrials in the classic sense. People, very much like us, apparently from other planets. And then there's all these other backup speculations, theories, ideas. Like some will say, oh, it's demonic. Some will say they're interdimensional. Perhaps they're ultra-terrestrials. Perhaps it's an intelligence that wears different masks and it's not ET at all. And it's just masquerading. Perhaps they're time travelers from the future. So I really unpacked all of these ideas. I'm like, let's dig deep. And because I got involved in this field and I thought, wow, this is not being portrayed accurately in the media. This seems very fear-based. And some of the books I didn't trust. And when I found out that there was a cover-up, which is demonstrably true, it's not speculation, and a sort of disinformation and misinformation campaign, it was very upsetting. Again, not being taught in schools, what's going on here? This is insane. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to build my own database. That's what I'm going to start there and just interview every person I can find. And the vast majority of these people have not talked to anybody. Most people don't report. So that's what I did for years and years, decades now. And I've talked to several hundred people who've been taken on board. Really, I've talked to thousands, but formal interview-wise. And of course, I've got all the books I can find on this subject. So I started looking at these explanations. And like the demonic explanation, I can pretty easily dismiss that because I became a paranormal researcher as well and investigated demonic hauntings, which are real, wholly different.
Yeah.
People will say, are they interdimensional? I'm like, well, yes, you are interdimensional. I'm interdimensional.
Yeah.
All entities have interdimensional aspects to them. I'm not sure how useful that is. It certainly doesn't preclude them from being, say, extraterrestrial. So I'm going through all these theories. One is, are they time travelers from the future? I scoured the literature. I never ran across a case where there was good reporting on that. ETs can do some amazing things with time because they will pull people out of the room and they'll have an hour-long experience, 2 hours, a couple of cases a lot longer than that, and bring them back and no time has passed.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's crazy. But as far as them coming from the future, I found a very small handful of cases, and most of them had, to me, some credibility issues. So I have put that on the far back burner.
Okay.
As I have the other explanation that this is an intelligence that wears different masks. Because that is a theory that's, like the time travelers, pretty much speculative. Now, are they ETs? I think so. I really do. Because that is the explanation that best fits the totality, and I'll underline that, the totality of the evidence. Because we have the craft.
Yeah.
According to the whistleblowers, we have the bodies. People have implants in them. I do think it's important to consider these ideas.
For sure.
But until and unless we can get some really good, does that peg, fit that hole, until that happens, then I'm going to put that on the back burner. But I think given the fact that we are physical beings living on a planet in a vast universe that clearly has a lot of other planets in it, it makes perfect sense that what we're dealing with are people.
Absolutely. And, I think that when we look at different cases, we, especially when it comes to the schools, we can see, I guess, to a certain degree, a certain amount of consistency, kind of like what you're pointing out. We talked about the Ariel School, and you said that you picked out certain schools because it really sort of struck you. What was it that struck you about Westall? Like, what was it that you looked at this case and you said, wow, why does this stand out?
It has some really amazing elements to it. First of all, there's the 200 to 300 students and a number of teachers. But what really kind of stuck out to me was the cover-up that was clamped down quick and hard on this case. There was a teacher there who was very quickly snapping all kinds of photographs of these craft. The military showed up within, I think it was like 20 minutes after this incident. There were landing traces. Those were quickly plowed over. The children were brought into the auditorium and told, what you think you saw, you did not see. And you are not to talk about it. And there were some kind of illegal things going on here when children were brought into rooms without their parents' consent and essentially threatened. Not essentially, they were threatened. Uh, and while there was an article or two, this was quickly suppressed, and there was no publicity for a couple of years until Dr. James McDonald traveled to Australia, heard rumors of the case, went and started interviewing people, and that's when the whole cover-up started to unravel. There's a researcher, God, what's his name? Shane Ryan, I think it is. Um, I hope that's his name because I'm going to get in trouble if it's not. But he's the lead investigator. He's still working on this case. I'm begging him to write a book. There has been a documentary on it. Like I said, it's the case that keeps on giving.
Mhm.
It's amazing. There's a actual monument at the school now uh, where this event occurred. And yeah, the landing traces. Come on. Where are those photographs? This is really the ultimate case. It's Australia's most widely viewed UFO incident in history. That's what I love about these schoolyard cases. They're very widely viewed, and there is nothing like them in the literature. Well, there's UFO encounters at drive-in theaters, which has some amazing parallels.
Okay, that's kind of weird. The
It
science
is.
fiction movie playing and then like it wafts it like as it goes through the screen. That'd be crazy. Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
yeah. Some people are like, "Gosh, is this a special effect?" Seriously,
3D.
that ran through. But yeah, what's amazing about the schoolyard encounters is they're very widely viewed. There was one in New Zealand at Richmond Elementary School, which had, I think, 400 students, and it hovered over the school for 20 minutes, and it took up a good portion of the sky. There was an airport right next door, which is true for the Opalaka case. There were planes flying around at the Westall High School case. There was another case right next to an airport in Florence, Arizona. These airport folks deny. They didn't see anything. It wasn't on radar. I don't know if they're lying or they truly didn't see anything. But that Richmond uh, elementary school in Maranui, New Zealand, is a really good example of how widely viewed these cases are. That's another one that really is like, oh my gosh. Because when the teacher was on the playground, there's two teachers on the playground supervising, and suddenly it goes deathly quiet. This is a primary school.
Yeah.
Young kids, they're loud. They're
Mm,
loud when they play.
mm.
Suddenly, no one's saying a word. And he looks up, and there's this massive craft. And a kid comes running up to him, like, I forget his name, Mr. Whatever. What is that? Is that a UFO? And he looked up and said, Yeah, I do believe it is. Uh, oh my gosh, these cases, I don't know how they slid under people's radar for so long.
Well, you know what though? It's funny because I think that especially with the Westall case, and I remember hearing about how the government came in and rolled in and completely like you said they clamped down and they really sort of gave everybody a hard time. But at the same time, I think that people who have been trying to cover up the whole UFO thing know that if you have kids, and kind of like what we've been talking about, kids are the ones who are not going to be lying. You can always turn around and say, oh, Joe Blow lied about it, or Jane Doe just wants, publicity. But children are not out there looking for publicity. You know what I mean? So if you have a bunch of kids that are talking about UFOs, if I'm trying to cover it up, that's the first place I'm going to go because I know that that's going to be a lot more authentic. Kind of like what we're saying, it's authentic. So that's a bit of a threat to that whole sort of paradigm. You mentioned,
Why it was so clever by the ETs.
yeah,
They
exactly.
really figured it out.
Exactly. There, you're very, very smart. Now, you talked about the one in New Zealand. Can you tell us? I've never heard about this one. What was the name of the school? The one in New Zealand? Can you tell us a little bit more about
Richmond.
that case?
Yeah, I kind of told you pretty much
Okay.
all I can recall offhand. It was Richmond Elementary School in Maranui, New Zealand. There was 400 kids. This craft came very low and covered a good portion of the sky. It was disc shaped. And when this craft left, it did something that I'm like, oh my gosh, I've heard this many times. they will suddenly turn up on edge and dart away because apparently when they're maneuvering around our planet, they sort of harness the gravitational magnetic field lines in order to maneuver. And this is apparently a technique they use. So you will often hear reports of UFOs flying at a sort of horizontal or a vertical orientation. And that was true in that case. But it really struck me because this thing was so big. It's very hard to tell how low these objects are and how big they are because unless you have some way of determining size and distance, if you don't know what the object, I mean, if it were, say, a helicopter, you could estimate this distance. But these are unfamiliar objects. So, but apparently it was quite large and very close. So again, this is one of those incidents that's clearly a display. Can I tell you about one of my favorite cases?
Absolutely. Please do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love this case. This one took place in Marysville, Ohio, at Jerome Elementary School. And it's just a terrific case. October 22nd, 1954, all the students were out on the playground. I think there was about 60 of them. And these metallic craft showed up. They were about 1,000 feet up, which is on the higher end in terms of elevation for schoolyard encounters. And they're darting around and they're putting on their display. When one of the students said, you know what, we better tell the teachers. So they ran in and alerted the principal, who came out and was absolutely stunned. He couldn't hardly believe his eyes and immediately ran inside to get another teacher. And that's when the UFOs darted off. And here's when something very interesting happened. These UFOs ejected or somehow caused a huge volume of what we call angel hair to come cascading down. There's a lot of theories about what angel hair is. It's a spider web, kind of cotton candy-like substance, which is either emitted from UFOs or more likely a result of the high temperature or the plasma field surrounding these craft interacting with our atmosphere. This is what I've heard from contactees, so that's why I say that. But at any rate, it sent down volumes of this material onto the playground. Definitely the playground or the school was the target because for almost a mile surrounding it, there was this material. I mean, it was draped over telephone wires, creating tunnels down the street. This was a big deal, an enormous amount of this substance. The teacher or the principal scooped it up and rolled it up into a gelatinous ball. It ended up turning his hands green. That alarmed him, rightfully so, I think. He washed his hands. Because normally this angel hair will sublime very quick, disintegrate. But there was so much of it that they were able to gather a sample. And they sent it off to the local Air Force base, Lockbourne Air Force Base. And they said, oh, we'll get back to you. Of course, they never did get back to them. But later, years later, it turns out that there was a Major White who worked at the Pentagon who said that they were studying UFOs, and that was the one case that year which really stumped them. And there's other cases like that with the schools, for whatever reason, involving huge volumes of angel hair. 1 year later, there was an almost identical case at another school in North Carolina. So I'm not sure why. That was at Whitsett Elementary School, literally 1 year and 5 days later. So there's that weird sort of publicity campaign pattern going on. And that involved 120 students. So that's one of my favorite cases because people say, where's the physical evidence? A lot of them have physical evidence. I mean, even photographs.
Wow, that's really weird. And so this gelatinous substance, so I guess it wasn't toxic. I mean, apart from turning somebody's hands green, that is weird. I mean, that's just really cuckoo. So I guess I never heard from them, but you feel that this is more to do with sort of like an exhaust, like as a physical thing that happens when it hits our atmosphere, as opposed to, let's say, trying to poison people or put something into the atmosphere, you know?
Percent, because no one's actually seen it coming out of some exhaust port or anything, uh, which UFOs don't have. And I found a few contactees. I'll point out Dolly Saffron, one of my favorite.
Yeah.
I wrote a book about her case called Symmetry. And whenever I would have questions like this, I would go to her because she was able to fill in a lot of the questions I had out of the blanks. And I'm like, have you heard of angel hair? And she's like, what are you talking about? Because she wasn't really in touch with the whole UFO zeitgeist or whatever you want to call it, the volumes of literature. I'm like, it's this substance, and I described it, and she's like, oh, well, yeah, she's been on board when that happened. And she said, this is essentially the plasma fields interacting with elements within our own atmosphere. But it has been studied, and it's got some interesting, this is not a naturally occurring thing by any means. Uh, so
Okay, so that
that's my
mean
understanding. Yeah.
okay, so the angel hair basically, I guess, is something that it's a part of that whole phenomena. That's really interesting because I'd also heard about something like this in France as well. There was an interesting case in the 1950s in France where they had that small town. I can't for the life of me remember it, but that everybody came out and it was all over the trees and everywhere, and people were picking it up, and it was very strange. But somehow it seemed to dissolve or become like a mousse, and then it just sort of like wafted away. So
It was
that's kind of
Oloron,
interesting.
Oloron, France.
Oh, Laurent
I
France?
remember.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay. Yeah. So you know the one I'm talking about. Yeah.
I
Exactly.
do, which
Yeah.
was a school, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this
Oh.
teacher, yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So it's again a school. What's going on here? What's happening here? A
Uh, s-
school, angel hair. What's happening? Help me out.
I think it's another sort of unforgettable display. Um, Sometimes ETs will do something that is so dramatic that it's absolutely undeniable to people. There was another case in Italy involving angel hair, which was at a soccer stadium. It stopped the game. This was also in the 50s. And I think there was like
Okay.
20,000, 40,000 people saw it. It's ejected volumes of this angel hair. I looked at sporting events to see if there was any parallel there, and I found a few, a handful, not over 100. I looked at concerts too, thinking, well, people are outside and perhaps, this would be a thing. And I found a few, but not to the extent that it's schools. I think it's, again, the kids. Um, there's that saying, get them while they're young, uh, and that is, I think, words of wisdom there, because this is something, people talk about indoctrination. I wouldn't use those terms,
Yeah. I don't like
but
that.
but if you can, train a child early on to, not do drugs and take life seriously and be a good person, and this is real and this isn't. I think that's what's going on here, is that they're letting kids know from a very early age that this is real to have an effect on society. And it's worked because now almost everybody on this planet knows what a UFO is.
Yeah.
You might not believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do.
Mm-hmm.
Gallup polls show that most people think this is real,
Mm-hmm.
whereas sightings have occurred to, as far as we know, 10 to 20% of the population. I think it's probably more than
I think
that.
it's more than that. Just that people don't talk about it. I think it's definitely more than that for sure.
Yeah.
I know that we're getting some comments here, and I have here Kelly Wacker. Hi, Kelly, and she says here it's very interesting that we have here. She says here the aliens are creating star children. So that's an interesting topic right there. Could it be that they're also trying to contact children who may in a schoolyard, like, is it sort of like they're trying to contact these kids because it's going to lead to other contacts at another date and time? I don't know. That just a little something I'm throwing out there, really.
Yeah, well, I think there's something to that
Mm-hmm.
because while it looks like most of these cases it's a simple hello, they've got to know the ETs, as any logical person would surmise, that this is the kind of event that is going to have a huge impact on a person, that that could change the course of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've certainly see that with people I interview. And it can be something as simple as a quick flyby. They now know that there's something out there that is beyond Earth. And it changes the way you view everything, yourself, your place in the universe, and what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we do see this. We see a number of kids who have become contactees. That was true with Emily Trim. God bless her, she passed on at the Rua, Zimbabwe case. She started having visitations by gray ETs. Her testimony is so compelling. She's very emotional and very heartfelt when she described her encounters. Malcolm Robinson, he is a very well-known, prolific author and researcher in Scotland. And boy, was I delighted when I found out that he was one of the witnesses to a playground UFO encounter, a schoolyard UFO encounter. And now look at him today, one of Scotland's leading UFO researchers. There was another guy who became a very famous radio personality and physicist, quantum physicist and astronomer. And that was sparked by his early UFO sighting. So I think that some of these cases, the ETs are sort of planting a seed,
Mm-hmm.
if you will,
Mm.
and saying, here's an experience that might encourage someone to
Exactly.
seek new ideas, think outside of the box,
Exactly.
consider new paradigms.
Yeah, no, I definitely believe that 1,000%. And I believe that because, like you said, get them while they're young. Because if you're trying to, it kind of like in marketing or something, you have to know your market, you have to know your niche, you have to know what you're working with. And if you know that adults are going to have the either the demon thing, or they're going to have the religious thing, and they're going to be already sort of like set in their ways, getting the children would be a much better deal, as well as, like, when they're younger, when they're open-minded and they haven't been polluted with the rest of society, it makes for a much better canvas in which to draw on. So I think that that makes a lot of sense. And the fact that it's in a schoolyard means that the kids are not going to wake up from it and say, oh, but maybe I wasn't dreaming it, or your mother and dad are going to say, oh, no, 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 you're dreaming, and don't worry about it, go back to sleep. You can't do that when you're on a schoolyard. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it
Daylight sightings are pretty rare.
yeah,
Daylight landings are even
more
rarer.
rare. Yeah.
We have so many of these cases. And if it were one kid or two or five,
Yeah.
you'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
But no, these are, again, widely viewed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that there are half of these cases involving adults. Because some people will say, well, kids, kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, hold on a second here. Half do involve teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot dismiss these just because you think kids aren't good witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've said repeatedly here, the reasons why they probably are very good witnesses. And it's such a delight to hear their testimony
Mm-hmm.
because I don't often have the opportunity to interview young kids
Mm-hmm.
because this is something I will only do in the presence of their parents
Of
and with
course.
their parents' permission,
Mm-hmm.
which has happened. And wow, is it amazing to hear. I did it with my niece and nephew, or my nephews rather, because I am related to them.
Mm-hmm.
I have
Exactly.
some immunity there.
Exactly.
And my family knows I'm gung-ho with this, and I'm very unfiltered. I'm truthful to a fault,
Mm-hmm.
to almost saying inappropriate things sometimes. I'm like, it's true. But yeah, I think they make such good witnesses because
Yeah, there's the
they,
innocence there.
yeah, and yeah, like I said, I wept in some of these cases because children would come home and they tell their parents. There was a case in California where the child came home like, Daddy, Daddy, I saw this thing. It was this flying plate. if the window opened up, we saw these little guys inside. And his father's like, oh my God, and called up another parent. And the parent said, yes, this did happen. He went to the school and they denied. And he got furious with
Of
them and
course.
found another witness. And they finally admitted it. They tried to cover it up. They did their level best to cover this up.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up reporting it to the National UFO Reporting Center. And you can hear the audio recording of the father. Yeah, some of these cases are just so profoundly touching.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to trace a few of them personally and investigate them, but a number of these came from a wide variety of sources.
Mm-hmm.
Newspaper articles, they never got national news, almost never. They would get the local paper, and that's it.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? I'm going to go over to a next case here, the Broadhaven case, because I think that the Broadhaven case is something that's very, very interesting. Again, a whole bunch of kids that were witness to what was a UFO. This seems to happen a lot in the UK. Now, mind you, the UK is very special. I think there's something just sort of very magical and mystical about the UK, but that's just me. But there seems to be a lot of UFO cases that are very interesting. And Wales. Wales is also a very interesting place as well. Did you want to talk a little bit more about the Broadhaven case and what that was about?
We love the Broadhaven case. They're one of the schools that still have regular anniversaries, reunions, because it affected them so profoundly. And the teachers very wisely had them do all these drawings of what they had seen. Their their testimony is remarkably consistent because people, as a general rule, are not great observers. And talk to any investigator, police officer, or what have you, who is investigating a car accident, and they'll say, "Well, what color was the car?" "It was blue." "No, I thought it was red." "Did it run the red light or the?" People. There's variations in testimony, which actually is a clue towards its validity. So we see a little bit of that. But what I love about the Broadhaven case is you have a group of, I think it was 8 kids, uh, thereabout, who saw this craft coming down and landing in the grove of trees behind the school. And this is the MO of the ETs. It's always like right outside of the school in a grove of trees. It's so interesting to me that this is so consistently reported. And they went running up to it, and this little guy came out, very short, dressed in a jumpsuit, not human looking. This wasn't a typical gray either. So you had that really wide variety of humanoid types in a lot of these reports. And didn't say anything, didn't come up, didn't communicate. And the whole event was maybe, I think, 10 minutes or so. But they went running back to the school and like, we saw this. And teachers could tell that the students were sincere because they were very emotional, separated them. God bless the teachers for doing that and had them draw their pictures. It got a lot of publicity. So this ended up getting published in newspapers. Reporters showed up. It was a big deal. And it wasn't for some time that 2 or 3 of the school employees came out and said, okay, yeah, I did see something. The debunkers came on in full force. Turned out that there was a petroleum tank down the street. And people are like, oh, that's what they saw. And put up pictures of this tank, which is so absurd because, this is a school the kids go to all the time. Kids know what a gas tank looks like.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, if it's down
gaslight.
the street from them, why would you not know? How stupid is that? And maybe I'm just being a conspiracy theorist, but a lot of these debunkers that come out and they sort of like dust them off and they sort of prop them up and they bring them out. I think those are paid. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think a lot of them are just like agents that are just paid to talk about discrediting witnesses. I really feel it, and because they're out there to make sure that people don't take it seriously. Because one thing that I do know is that when you look at something like the Condon report, that and the different reports were made specifically. There was a format that the military followed and said, if you ever get these cases, find the ones that can be easily explained, and so you promote those, and the ones that can't be explained, then you ridicule. And like they give a whole, like this in the United States, but they gave a whole sort of format of how to ridicule. It was actually embedded in the system to ridicule people so that they wouldn't talk about it. So it's already there. It's done. It's not a conspiracy at that point. They actually were, the American government was in the process of doing that. So
It is in black and white.
it's a
I've
black
seen
and white. It's printed, you know. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
we know that Dr. Donald Menzel, an
Yeah.
astronomer,
Yes.
was a paid misinformant.
But that's what I'm
Uh,
saying. It's they're paid.
yeah, it's very hard to prove that, but they proved it with Donald Menzel, who said,
Yeah.
"No, UFOs aren't real." We now know he knew they were real.
Yeah.
Uh, and so some of these astronomers who are poo-pooing the whole subject,
Yeah.
I am very suspicious of them because any intelligent person, all they have to do is have a day of research and we'll realize there's truth to this subject. So it's 100% disingenuous and it's an honest to God shame
Yeah.
because
It
they are
is.
on the wrong side. They're committing a terrible crime. And I think that there is such a thing as karma, and
Yes.
they're going to regret this at some point because lying is never the right course. That's why I hate it when people say, "Oh, catastrophic disclosure. It would cause the society, those collapse of society." I'm like, well, hold on a second. Right now, we're dealing with catastrophic non-disclosure.
Exactly.
It's causing untold damage to our society. So shut up about that. You are out of your mind if you think lying to the American people is the correct course of, well, to the world. What am I saying?
Yeah.
America.
Exactly.
To the people is the correct course of action. It's not.
No, it's not. And the reason why they're doing this is because of control. There's a lot of different aspects. We can go off into a whole other tangent on this. It's just, but it's really about control. And it's about, either it's the military industrial complex trying to control it from in terms of a militaristic and, technological view. And then there's also the religious establishment that don't want to see this happen because then it means sort of a challenge to their own beliefs. And there are also a lot of people that want to believe that there's nothing else that's out there. And I think there's also a certain amount of religious dogma even in science, like, I mean, there's it's funny because science likes to see itself separate from religion, but it becomes in a way a dogma in itself because a lot of scientists don't want to even have the open mind to look at it and have an open mind to even entertain the thought and say, well, okay, well, maybe there's something else here. No, 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 no. If it's not the science, and if it's not my thesis that I put out and all that kind of stuff, I don't want to know. So I think there's a definite, even from the scientific perspective, the inability to want to open up and see it for what it is. And I think it's just really fear the unknown. I think that with humans, there's always that fear the unknown, whereas with children don't have that fear. And I find that that's what's fundamental, is that children don't have the same kinds of fears. Children will go, blindly into something. But as adults, we learn and we're like, okay, you have to be cautious and all that kind of stuff as we get older. But children don't really have that. So I'm wondering if it's also because they see that children are open and they don't have the fear that humans or sort of adults put in their own path to
I think
close
so.
themselves off.
In the vast majority of these cases, the kids have no fear. There was a couple. There was a very early case, 1950, in Prestonburg, Kentucky. I loved that because I'm like, my name's Preston. This is like one of the first cases. I'm like, wow, look at that. But this UFO came swooping down over the kids very low and created a panic. And in fact, one kid got so upset he threw up. Uh, so I think they learned their lesson there because that's pretty much the only one that was like that. But definitely, government does become involved in a number of these cases trying to cover it up. It's certainly not just the uh, Westall High School case where they came and threatened kids. There was another case at Adams Middle School in Texas where UFOs showed up during a game on the schoolyard grounds and put on this huge display. And the next day, the kind of quote men in black showed up, and an announcement came on over the speaker that said, "Oh, what you guys saw was just a fireworks display." Well, it turned out one of the students, who would later become an intelligence officer, did her research with her parents' help and looked for any fireworks display that was taking place, which of course there wasn't any. Uh, and like the another case, the Whitsett Elementary School case in North Carolina, which was another angel hair case, uh, the Air Force showed up there. Well, it turns out the principal saw it too, and he was from World War II, a pilot with hundreds and hundreds of hours of flight experience, a trained observer, and basically had this knockdown argument with this lieutenant or general, I forget, colonel. I don't know the rank, but at any rate, an Air Force officer, and said, I know aircraft better than you do. And I know what I saw, and you don't know what you're talking about, because he was a trained observer and did collect a sample of the angel hair, by the way, and sent it off to Burlington Scientific Labs, who
Okay.
said, well, we don't know what this is. We could be spider webs. You should send it to a biologist, which he did. And the biologist said, no, this is not spider webs. It's far too even. And if there was that volume of angel hair coming down, you should have had 1,000 spiders. There wasn't one spider.
You're
But
one
the point
giant
is,
spider.
yeah. But the point is, the Air Force came up and they tried so hard to cover up this case and provide. They told him he was seeing temperature inversions. These
Oh
were
no, our
metallic craft.
favorite. Okay, that's right up
Yeah.
there with swamp gas temperature inversions. I like that one.
Yeah, there was another schoolyard case. This one it made me laugh and also was very concerning because this UFO was right over the playground. There was a group of 7 or 10 people. This was a rare nighttime encounter, and one of the adults waved at the UFO, and it dropped down right over their heads
Oh, whoops.
to about like 50 feet. They say it was 20, but I'm guessing
Where was this
probably
exactly?
this was in Massachusetts.
Do you know when? Like what the name was by any chance? No.
Gosh,
Yeah.
I
Okay. No,
cannot
I'm just
think of
sort of
it.
like, I mean, that's just that's crazy. Imagine you're like, oh, it's all the way over there, and all of a sudden, whoosh, it comes down. I'm like, ah,
Yeah,
it's the last thing I
I,
want.
I might be able to think of it if you get,
Okay.
I don't know. But at any rate, it scared one lady so bad she
You think?
soiled herself. Oh yeah, she soiled herself.
Yeah.
So,
No. No kidding.
oh my gosh. And so they called the police. The police saw it too. It was a big deal. This is the one where it went over to the college after that and showed it to the
Oh
college
God.
students. But guess what? Project Blue Book um, hears about the case, does an investigation, put that in quotes, because
Mm.
they didn't actually interview any witness. They just heard about the report and they said, oh, well, it's clear what people are seeing here. It's Venus. This is Venus.
But Venus comes down and lands 50 feet in front of you. Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
it makes you soil yourself. I don't
Exactly.
know anyone who's been that frightened of Venus
Yeah. Really.
ever.
Oh my God.
So
I can't
this
even
is
have
our
Jupiter.
tax dollars at work, and
Yeah.
it's infuriating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is why I'm so glad that the ETs are doing this in such a clever way,
Hmm.
because this slides under the radar, and it's very effective.
Yeah. But that's the
Uh,
point, eh?
there was there was a case in Scotland where it was over. Gosh, I can't remember the school now. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But at any rate, this classic sombrero-shaped UFO hung right over the church or the school steeple there, and the whole class saw it. It exerted a shadow onto the ground. The teacher saw it, and off it went. Well, the kid goes running home and tells his parents, I'm like, ah, that's nice, honey. You imagined it. Until, of course, the next day it was front page news. And they were like, oh, we're so sorry. You did see something, didn't you?
Wow.
So, another example of, kids aren't stupid.
Hmm.
It's just, it's so touching to see these
Hmm.
stories.
Yeah, but you know what though? It's true. Kids are not stupid, and I know that in your book you talk about you talk about some of the stories that have come and gone, and some of the stories from the past. Do you find that you have some really recent examples now? Because the reason why I'm asking is because a lot of kids now, parents buy them, even young kids. Parents are buying them cell phones and you can take a picture or a video with a cell phone. Do you have anything now where you have, let's say in the last 5 years, in examples of kids seeing stuff in school? And only because, as you know, I mean, you were on the panel when we did the Disclosure Day panel back in June, and for that I'm so thankful. And I got a chance to meet you and Dolly and everybody else, so it's great. And we were talking about Disclosure Day, and it's becoming such a big momentous thing that's happening. Do you know of any recent situations where kids are seeing UFOs now in the schoolyard? Like let's say in the last 2 to 5 years.
I don't. Part of the reason was this book I wrote about that long ago, and
Okay.
I found some cases from like 2019 or so, which were current at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and an investigation never ends. So I'm definitely finding new cases, but most of them are what you would call historical, meaning, they're 10 years or older. But there was definitely a drop off. I did find some photographic cases for sure. I mean, there was a case at let's see, Hotchkiss High School in Connecticut. That was quite some time ago, 1967. But this UFO kept showing up. And so one of the
Really?
kids got the bright idea like, to get his camera. And what's really interesting is he set up the tripod and got ready, and the UFO showed up and it arced across the sky. It disappeared and then reappeared because the kid was doing a time exposure. And so it was almost as if the UFO occupants knew that. But he got this really interesting photograph. This was a rare nighttime sighting because I think this was a high school. Uh, yeah, Hotchkiss High School. So that was a really interesting photographic case. Probably my favorite photographic case occurred at Sacred Heart Elementary School in Moline, Illinois. This was in March of 1967. This was a Catholic school, I believe, where the students were taught by nuns, and they were out there on the playground, and this very large metallic craft the size of a school bus shows up, and it's kind of circling over the schoolyard, freaking the nuns out. God bless them. I can see how that would be a shock to them. Well, it turns out there was a police officer who was patrolling that area, and his son was at the school, so he had a personal connection to it. And he had a movie camera in his police cruiser. So he ran, he was actually outside, he ran and got it and managed to film this object as it moved off. Now, by today's standards, it's okay footage. It's certainly better than what we've seen in the file drop from our recent government file drops. These, what do they call them? Tranches.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but he caught this on film as it's moving away. And what I love about this is here's film that is supported by multiple eyewitness evidence. And he's a police officer, trained observer,
Yeah, really.
and not that police can't be corrupt or liars, but
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, they're hired to be trustworthy and help
Mm-hmm.
people. And did take it to the police and showed it to them. Well, the men in black showed up,
Oh,
would
there
not
you go.
identify where they were from, um, and really wanted to see the film. And he cooperated. He showed him the film. He kept it. In fact, you can still see this online if you are,
Oh, really? What's it
patient.
what's it called? Maybe we can try and find it. We can continue and I'll try and find it and maybe show. What is it called again?
Yeah, it's called Moline, Illinois, at Sacred Heart Elementary School.
How do I spell?
This
Okay,
was
Moline.
Moline,
Okay,
and
Illinois.
I think this was March 9, 1967.
Okay.
Uh, gosh, I can't think of his name, but his son is still doing interviews. Uh, and yeah, I searched for it and I finally found the footage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, gosh, I don't know if I still have it but I'm pretty sure I had the link of it somewhere.
Okay,
Uh,
well,
but
I'll try to
but
find it. And that's in Wichita? No.
No, Moline, Illinois.
Moline, Illinois. Okay. Well, we'll try to get that because if there's a footage, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing that and see if there was something that. Okay, and so the men in black showed up at that point. What happened exactly?
Yeah, he was at the police station, and these government officials showed up and would not identify what agency they were from. Presumably one of the three-letter agencies, NSA, CIA, FBI, I don't know. They wouldn't say. But they somehow found out about this film, and they wanted to see it, which just goes to show that we do have elements within our government who are taking the subject very seriously, and still are. We haven't had disclosure, by the way. Uh, these recent file drops are a step in the right direction, but they're still not admitting to the Capitol flyover or Malmstrom or Edwards Air Force Base landing or Roswell or what have you. So there's still these folks who get a hold of evidence like a photograph and who shows up? Government folks or quasi-government. I should probably say that would be more accurate. Uh, and yeah, they didn't take the footage. I don't. I would have to look up that report to see if they actually even tried. But this was another case that did get quite a bit of publicity and was pretty thoroughly researched by local investigators. I think Leonard Stringfield and maybe Leo Sprinkle got
Okay.
involved in that case.
Okay, that's very interesting. And we've have we ever had men in black show up and talk to the kids? That's kind of interesting. I don't know if we talked about that. If they, because I know they talk with adults, but do they even talk about kids? Because that'd be kind of scary. Now that would scare me if I was a kid. If I saw the Men in Black.
Well, I mean, government folks definitely did. 100%. We know that happened in the Westall High School case. The Opelika, Florida case of April 1967 was at an elementary school, and these craft were still there when the government showed up, and they ordered every kid to go inside and close down the school for the day. Now, those who had walked to school or took their bike were allowed to leave that way, but there was do not cross tape, the stuff put across,
The yellow stuff
and
there. Yeah.
right, and they were told, go away, you're not allowed to be here. This was later explained away as helicopter tests, which is so
At a
absurd.
school, you're gonna
Yeah.
stop the school to do helicopter tests. Really?
And you can hear a
Wow.
helicopter a mile
And you can
away.
hear a
I mean,
helicopter a mile away because I'm going to tell you something. I was walking by a protest way back when, and they had helicopters, and I mean this helicopter was so high, like it was just like a little bit thing, but I could see it was a helicopter. It was so loud, like I mean I can't imagine. It was so loud, and I'm thinking, you're gonna mistake that for a UFO, really? Because UFOs, I guess, are really noisy. Because if you've ever heard of a helicopter in real, like if you're right up next to a helicopter, I swear to God, it's extremely noisy. No,
yeah,
no,
it's annoyingly noisy.
yeah, it is.
I had
Yeah,
one fly over my house when I was in LA. I thought the house was going to come down. I'm
Yeah,
like, what
really.
the heck?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was vibrating the whole entire house, and it was
exactly.
probably 100 feet up.
It's very
Uh,
high, and yet it was extremely noisy. Just because of because of where I'm from. Do you have anything in Canada? Do you ever hear about any UFOs landing in schoolyards in Canada? Because I've never always
uh,
wondered about that.
yeah, absolutely. Gosh, let me see if I can think of it.
Yeah.
Um, there was one that was showing up repeatedly over a school, and I just cannot remember the name of it
Okay.
offhand,
You remember
but
the
it was really
province?
interesting. No, I don't. Gosh, I could probably send it to you if
Yeah, no, I'm just sort of wondering because I was just sort of like, oh, one of our own, that kind of thing. We don't really hear much about UFOs in Canada. I mean, I know there's a lot. There's definitely, that stuff that happens here, but it's interesting how we don't sort of like most of the sexy big ones happen in like the UK or the United States. I find that kind of
All
interesting.
right,
That's
here's
cool.
one. I found it. I got my
Okay.
notes. East Burlington Public Middle School, July 1953. This was in Ontario, Canada. This turns out to be a really good case, too. Donald McAlpine was on the playground, and he and his fellow schoolmates were playing baseball when this object showed up. It was oval in shape, thick in the center, thin around the edges, and hovering very close by, right over an elm tree. There's that weird pattern. And it was stationary, just kind of sitting there. And Donald called his classmates' attention to it. He said it was silver in color, very distinctly defined, and no noise at all. And it started to move towards them, slowly at first and faster, making this long, graceful curve over the school and reflecting the sunlight. And 13 years later, he still recalled the event and finally reported it to NICAP, the National Investigative Committee of Aerial Phenomena. So yeah,
Okay.
I have one, two, three, four, five cases in Canada. I found them all over the world, Crystal. Almost every country I looked at. I mean, I found a case in China, all across South America, Canada, bunch in England, all across Europe, Africa, Russia. I found one in Armenia. That's not in the book. I found it later. Uh, but man, oh man, yeah, it's a worldwide thing for sure. There was one that followed the school bus in Canada, which kind of freaked out. This was in Saskatchewan.
Okay.
Followed the school bus for June 1st, 1967, paced them for 2 miles. And this was a classic UFO with 8 circular portholes, a glass dome on top, and was one of a number of cases where UFOs showed up, kind of followed the school bus
Mm,
around. I included those because that was close enough to a
yeah.
quote schoolyard encounter to, I think, be relevant.
Absolutely. And I haven't had a chance to really sort of check the chat as much. But if you were in high school or elementary school and you're here tonight and you're watching, tell us if you've seen a UFO and what kind of experiences that you had. If you've had an experience with UFOs in your school, and we'll bring it up and let Preston know about it. So if you want to sort of take the next couple of minutes, guys, and to let us know what experiences you had while in school, we'll read them out and share it with everybody. But moving forward, though, Preston, do you feel that this fits into the disclosure day aspect? Like, based on what we were talking about last time? Is this a part of disclosure too? How do you feel?
100%. Yeah. People will say, well, why don't we have disclosure? Well, hold on a second. We have. We
Mm,
absolutely have. And this is a prime example of the ETs having done their part for disclosure. Our governments are working in the wrong direction. Again, I'll use that air quotes governments because I'm not sure. There's lovely people in government, and there's a bunch of them who do want the truth out. But the secret government cabal, the folks behind the cover up, the intelligence agencies, the military industrial complex, those are the ones who we're working against. There was a case in Virginia, I think it was. Donald Shallcross had a UFO come down. ETs came out. He had a long conversation with them. Really impressed him. He's like, why don't you just show yourselves, disclose? And they said, their response kind of made me laugh. They said, we already have. So they absolutely done their part. But what we have is a very well-funded, nefarious disinformation campaign and cover-up of UFO evidence and a smear campaign. You're 100% right with that, Crystal. Blue Book was not an investigative body.
no.
There was a guy in Nevada, a really good observer who was just out of flight school, had 3 UFOs come down in front of him on the highway. Great case received by Project Blue Book. What did they do? They covered it up and ordered officers to do a smear
Yeah,
campaign
that's the thing.
against this guy.
Yeah.
And this was one of the cases J. Allen Hynek personally pointed out as why Blue Book is not to be trusted. So yeah, disclosure has happened, and the ETs have done their part.
Hmm.
Um, Schoolyard is one of the excellent modalities that they've used, but we have regular waves of sightings over often small towns, but really over an entire country. For example, 1954, France, huge wave in October, November. On the heels of that, November, December, and January, 1954, 1955, Venezuela, the entire country was blanketed with accounts. It's another wave that people haven't heard of. Uh, I, there's so many of these. In 1957, second week of November, huge wave across the United States. In 1973, October, it's called the Year of the Humanoids. There's a book on that case because
What was that?
so many people. The book was called The Year of the Humanoids,
Okay,
actually.
yeah, but the humanoids. Now, let me understand. Humanoids are the ones that look like us, right? Like the
No,
no?
not
Okay.
necessarily.
Okay.
No. What's amazing about what we're dealing with here is that they do all look like us.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with humanoids. We are humanoids.
Mm-hmm.
A humanoid is a bipedal being, arms, legs, head, so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And almost without exception, that's what we're dealing with. There's a few complete outliers that are so few it's statistically insignificant. It's less than 1%. So we have different types, certainly, yeah. We have grays, we have human looking. Don't use the term Nordic, it's not accurate. They're not Nordics. They are some with dark skin, some tan, some look
Mm-hmm.
Asian, some Middle Eastern, Mesoamerican, you name it. They're of all ethnicities, but human looking.
Mm-hmm.
Mantids, little blue beings, tall whites, but all humanoid.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I understand, we all share a common ancestry. So I
Yeah.
would hesitate to call these different species because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not so sure they are. That's
Yeah.
what the contactees are being told, that we share a common heritage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah,
So
humanoids.
the reason why I'm asking about the name humanoids is because when you look at some of the early days of UFO contact, you look at stuff like Howard Menger and, Von Tassel and, Adamski and all that. They talked about humanoids and put it in air quotes, the humanoids that coming from Venus, and that a lot of them came from Venus and looked exactly like just you and me. And there was no sort of like, kind of like a Star Trek, in Star Trek, where you have people that are looking human, but they have like a different ears, or they have sing on the bridge on their nose, or tattoos or stuff like that. But they looked exactly like, if you didn't know, they looked exactly like us, as it were, or people that, for example, when you hear stories about the story by East Strangers, I think it was Stranger at the Pentagon. And that was a book that was talking about people that came, I think, again from Venus, and they wanted to meet with the government. Frankie Strangers wrote that book, and he was
I don't, yeah.
talking, I think, with I forget his name. I'm sorry, but the alien, and they looked exactly like us. Like they had a suit and everything, and they looked exactly humanoid, and not weird or very very pale. But literally, I heard that if they sat next to you on a bus, you wouldn't know. And so that was something that I felt was very very prominent in the 1950s. And then around the late 60s, early 70s, we started to get more into the grays and the mantid, and we hadn't really seen that as much before. And we started to get a lot of the grays, and so now we're starting to get a lot more. Like, I'd never heard of tall whites before that time, but maybe it's me. Maybe I just haven't been, but I hadn't heard of really mantids before that time. Before the 50s, I always heard about people that looked like, the George Adamski, tall blondes, that sort of thing. So, if you want to
Interesting,
comment
isn't
on
it?
that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've certainly thought a lot about this because the contactee era of the 1950s sort of ushered in the whole idea that we're being visited with Adamski and Truman Bethlen, Howard Menger, Daniel Fry,
Mm-hmm.
all these guys. There was quite a bunch of them. The Mitchell sisters,
Mm-hmm.
very few female contactees, but there were a few. And they were describing, by and large, almost exclusively human-looking
Yeah.
ETs.
Yeah, even Elizabeth Clare, who was also a
Yeah.
very prominent. And it's funny because I find that her story was really hushed up because she has an incredible story, and no one's really talked about it. I mean, not just from her book, but just in general. She was even interviewed, I think, in an Australian, or I don't know if it was South African, but I think it was an Australian. She had interviewed, and she described a whole like going to the planet and all that kind of stuff. Nobody talks about it, and that's kind of weird.
And really, these people were being taken on board, and today that's divided the UFO community. Like,
Hmm.
is they're hoaxers? No, they're not.
Hmm.
Timothy Good, I love him as a researcher. He dug down deep
Yeah.
with the Dan Fry case,
Hmm.
and I think that was absolutely legitimate. I know for a fact that Truman Bethurum, he said his book was sensationalized by the author who wrote it, and that it wasn't completely accurate. So there's that as well. But what we're looking at is a situation where the contactee era was pushed underground. It did not stop.
Okay.
This was still going on. But we had the report by Antonio Villas-Boas, the first really widely publicized on board case that was different, which was followed on the heels by the Betty and Barney Hill case
Hmm.
with Greys. We now have reports of Greys going back to the 1920s.
Okay.
And earlier, if you look at some of the apocryphal cases, historical, where there's drawings. I mean, we can go all the way back to cave art, and you can
Hmm.
see
Yeah. No, for
all of
sure.
it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But so what I think is happening here is a cultural bias and misreporting and fear-based reporting, because when the gray reports started dominating the media, these were some portrayed as lurid, you know, kidnappings, when I think that's a mischaracterization of what's actually going on in a good number of these cases. Not that it's not scary for people, not that some people feel like this wasn't something I asked for, but having talked to a lot of people who had that experience, they ultimately, many of them, I'm not going to say all, I'm not going to gaslight people. It
Hmm.
was like, oh, I hated it. They took me. It was against my will. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, all right. But a lot of people I've talked to who initially felt that way do not feel that way. And my reports, my database was dominated by grays, but right on the heels of it was human looking. And it's starting to even out a lot more now. Mantids are relatively rare.
Hmm.
And tall whites is another term. We start labeling Pleiadians, Arcturians, o- Orions, Andromedans. We love labels. It
Hmm.
helps, I think, sort of bring some sense to
Hmm.
a situation that seems really chaotic. And I don't think that ETs call themselves that. So we have to be very careful when we start applying labels to people and saying, I'm in this or that contactee.
Hmm.
Uh, That's why I like the term experiencer or
Okay.
onboard encounter rather than abduction.
Hmm.
But from what I can tell, this is cultural bias. This is a
Okay.
social phenomena
Fair
more
enough.
than anything.
Hmm.
Because yes, people were still having, and there's plenty reports of this, of 100% human-looking ETs who will sometimes be a bit tight-lipped or misdirecting about their actual origins.
Hmm.
Uh, you
It
generally
could be
don't
the
hear
prime
this.
directive. Maybe they don't want to because I know that there's definitely a sort of so-called prime directive that's kind of in effect for many, and they don't want to, I guess, contaminate. Like when we have
Yeah, I
scientists that
mean,
go into the rainforest, and they meet with cultures that are there that haven't really been exposed to modern society. I wonder if it's something like that where they try to sort of
I think there's some,
minimize the amount of influence.
yeah. Well, there was a case I investigated in Arizona where the couple was taken on board. He was healed of carpal tunnel syndrome and a bad knee. And she, the wife, asked, why don't you come down and, really
Stay a while.
interact,
Yeah.
help us out. And they're like, we can't do that. You have to learn to solve your own problems.
Hmm.
The word karma has come up in a number of cases where they
Okay.
said, no, we can't do this. This is your karma. You made your bed. You have to fix. There was a guy in Austria, very early case during, I think it was World War II. And he's like, we're having post World War II. He said, we have despots here. They're
Hmm.
ruling the country. They're completely corrupt. You have so much power. why don't you come down and fix things? And they said, we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very disruptive, and you are in a much better situation to do this, and it's your responsibility. There was a case in Lake Champlain, which is, gosh, Vermont,
Yeah, around
and then
Vermont, yeah,
um,
Montreal.
where two young teenagers were brought on board. Well, not they were 16 and 18, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a uh, the 16-year-old had a full recall eventually, uh, and under hypnosis, and he asked the ETs flat out, what? Why don't you come down? We've got people starving to death.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we can't do this. If we were to do that, the results would be much worse for you.
Really? Hmm.
So, yeah, they will intervene. Like Malmstrom incident,
Mm-hmm.
they shut down the missiles.
Yeah.
Did they destroy them? No.
No.
I wish they would had.
Yeah, really.
But would we learn our lesson? No.
No.
Would we have learned our lesson if Hiroshima and Nagasaki didn't happen?
Yeah, really.
We learned a very tough lesson there, and so far it's holding strong in terms of not decimating another country.
Exactly.
So
No,
far, fingers crossed. Uh,
absolutely. And I have an interesting comment here from Hallis Malin. There's the Council of Nine, which I've also heard of as well. The Council of Nine. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Council of Nine, I think that there was in the 60s or late 50s, Puharich, who was a researcher who was doing channeling and had contacted the Council of Nine. And within those channeling sessions, there was a man, maybe some of you know, by the name of Gene Roddenberry, who was a part of those channelings and had learned information from the so-called Council of Nine about how they can't interfere and about how there are different groups that are watching over the planet and all that kind of stuff. Have you heard of the Council of Nine,
I
Preston?
have, certainly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I lean on the side of skepticism with it.
Okay.
It has never once come up in any of the people I've interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there are some cases where channeling is involved.
Yeah.
And I've got like 20 books on channeling too.
Mm-hmm.
So I've studied that,
Mm-hmm.
and it definitely produces some interesting material. And some of the stuff that comes out is absolutely valid, and some I question,
Okay.
uh, like the idea of a galactic federation.
Mm-hmm.
There was a case in Australia where a guy asked flat out, "Is there a galactic federation?" And they kind of smiled at him and said, "Well, you can call it that. You might perceive it that way, but it's not wholly accurate." Because from what I understand, ETs don't have a government federalized system, prisons and money and all the kings and queens,
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. They are cooperative. They work very closely together. They're incredibly telepathic, incredibly advanced, uh, and certainly have councils. From what I hear from contactees, there's elders or wise ones who people will consult. And I would never in a million years think there was just 9 of them,
Mm-hmm.
or that there was some, you know, 9 people who rule over the galaxy
Mm.
type of thing. So I think I mean, that's my assessment.
No, for sure. Absolutely. Fair enough.
So I am skeptical of the quote Council of Nine, because who are these folks? Where do they come from? How long have they lived? I've got
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, they absolutely have wise ones, elders. That's what I hear from many contactees.
Okay. Yeah. And I have an interesting comment here from Hybridor. And he says here the Ponti, which is a group that he's in contact with, have said a society that fixes its own problems is a world ready for contact and not the other way around, which I think makes a lot of sense. Because I think that if you're having maturity to fix your own problems and to finally come to terms with what it is that you're working with, then maybe,
Well,
you know what I mean?
and look at any parent can
Mm-hmm.
answer this question. If you raise your child and you tie their shoes for them, and you cook for them, and you clean for them, and you do everything, you fill their gas tank, you do their laundry,
Yeah, really.
and then you send them out into the world, they're going to be paralyzed. They're not going to be able to function. So you have to, every parent knows that you have to teach a child to solve their own problems. And when they get in trouble with whatever it might be, uh, calling someone a bad name, shoplifting, committing any kind of crime, they have to pay the consequences.
Yeah.
You don't cover it up. You tell them you have to go fix your mistakes.
Yeah.
So I think that's what exactly we're seeing, because these guys are not 1,000 years ahead of us, the ETs. They're not 100,000 years ahead of us. From what I understand, they have been around for a very long time, and we've got a very long way to go to catch
Yeah.
up to them, and we're nowhere near close. And this is why they're coming down in such large numbers and taking people on board and saying, stop it with the nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Stop it with the pollution, the war and aggression, the greed and corruption. You're on the wrong path, as any parent would do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and it's funny because I do hear that a lot of them have said that, like we talked a moment ago about how there are descendants and that we have a lot more connections. So if you see a family member, or if you have like a brother, and you see your brother acting up, you definitely want to say, hey man, maybe you should reconsider this, that sort of thing, and sort of like try to sort of steer them in the right direction, especially if you feel that someone, like if you have like a teenage brother, going in the wrong direction or something like that, you say, hey, maybe you should reconsider that, don't do that sort of thing, because,
Yeah,
you
which
get
is
in
so
trouble.
encouraging to know that there are advanced societies out there, which is one of the driving forces behind the cover-up, by the way, I think, because if all humanity knew that there are societies out there that are crime-free, that have solved the problems with disease and overpopulation and war, uh, it would really cause a huge shift in priorities. And I think this is one of the problems we have here on this planet. We're dealing with a very small segment of our population that has gotten hold of a lot of power and technology and are abusing it. And it's come to a point now where things are about to break open. I think this is why we're seeing steps towards disclosure, because the folks who are behind it have become irrelevant. It's a lie. Everyone knows it. And if you lie to the point where it's so obviously true, no one's going to believe you. You're irrelevant. You're not credible. Go away. And they've dug their own grave, and I have very little sympathy for them because it's their own darn fault. And until and unless they're willing to be fully truthful and transparent, I really don't care what you have to say. We don't need lying liars to tell us what we know is true.
Yeah.
We just don't. So yeah, I get very passionate about this
Yeah,
because
no, I
it's
hear
so
you.
disingenuous. It's such a shame.
Yeah.
Shame on you guys. I hope they're listening because it's not too late to get on the right side of history
Yeah,
here
exactly.
and do the right thing. And it's not hard to tell the truth.
No.
It's much easier than it is to lie.
Yeah, but do you know, because you were on the panel and we had this conversation, because on this topic, one of the things that I feel was said when we had the panel back in June is that, and you've just touched upon it now, is that we are going to sort of walk past the so-called governments and all the agencies trying to hide this information. And we're just going to go, and the disclosure is going to be us making that connection. What do you think of that? Like, just to sort of revisit that topic again. In my opinion, it'll be us making that connection. We're no longer going to have to have the government as a go-between between us and so-called them. That we're the ones, because there's so many people now that are seeing this, and it's not just the odd rancher. Like, everybody's seeing it. There was something on the Canadian news recently about how they were showing these videos of all these UFOs, and I just was like, I was talking with a friend the other day, and I says, it's weird because Canadian news has a tendency to be extremely conservative, definitely more on the conservative side. And they had Mr. Rutkowski, who they'd spoken to, who's a leading researcher in Canada. I think he's in Winnipeg. And he was being interviewed, just like about a 2-minute segment. And they were talking about UFOs. But while he was talking, they were showing these pictures of UFOs. And I thought, wow, something's really happening. If Canadian news is really starting to talk about it, and that sort of open, sort of format. And so I feel that, yes, there's kind of in a way sort of playing catch up because we, the people, are leading this charge, and we're the ones who are going to be able to control it because we're the ones who they're bypassing the government. And I think, and would you say that that's where you feel it's irrelevant? Like these people who are on the wrong side are relevant because they weren't taking it seriously. And so now just go to the people, go to the children specifically. You know what I mean?
Well, in my opinion, what's the most powerful force on this planet? It's the people. It's not the government.
No.
And a fully, how would I put this? A mature society, a mature humanity would not need government at all.
Exactly.
Because why do we need government? To stop people from committing crimes, polluting the atmosphere or the waters, or doing wrong things. Look at the history of society, from caveman times to where there were city-states, and then feudalism and so forth. And it just started to go real south, real bad from the very start. And I remember just being astonished once when I'm driving along as a kid and there was a speed bump on the road. I'm like, Mom, what is that? Why is there a speed bump there? She's like, well, people drive too fast. I'm like, you're telling me they created this smooth road and then put bumps in it? I don't understand. She's like, no, people don't, they drive too fast. They're not safe. And it was a real wake-up call for me. And that's how I kind of look at government. Government is a speed bump. So we should not need them. A moral, ethical society doesn't need a government. And I think this is, again, the force behind the cover-up, because we don't need a government. Most people are good, I think.
I think so.
Given
too.
the opportunity.
Yeah.
They weren't fighting for their lives to get food and shelter.
Exactly.
And if you get to know somebody, it doesn't matter what they look like or what their political affiliation is or anything. If they fall down, you're going to run up and pull them up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we see this in disaster situations all the time.
Yeah.
It brings, often, usually, it brings out the best in people.
It does. Yeah.
So I think, that's kind of the situation where we're at, where we need to really recognize that we are one people. That's why I hate that term racism, because it's not true. You can call it discrimination if you want, but it's not racism. We're all one race. So stop that.
Yeah.
And there's so much divisiveness, which is so unnecessary and actually, I think, fostered.
But it's created, though.
Culture.
But I
Yeah,
mean, I hate to sort of go down this road, but the thing is that when you look at different stories about how we came to be on this planet, there are those who want to control it, and the best way to control it. And I always go back to the same example of the Tower of Babel, where they say, "Let us go down and separate their language. Let us go down and pit one brother against another. Let us go down and change their language and change, who they are, so that they can fight amongst each other, and so that we can control them, divide and conquer." So from that particular biblical time all the way up, it's always been about how do you foster a level of separateness from not only ourselves, but also separateness from others in order to keep us fighting and to keep us, because young children don't really see that. Children are taught that. So we are born inherently, seeing, we don't see that. And it's only as we get older and then our parents will say, oh, okay, well, that person's black. Okay, well, that person's this religion, or that person's this or that, and all this kind of stuff. This person's short or fat, or all that kind of nonsense. It's inherently learned, and we use, and that's what society is turned into. If we didn't have those types of things, which were specifically put in to control us, then you're right. We could be in a society where we could have the maturity. And I'm often reminded, because I like cinema, but I'm often reminded of that scene in Superman from 1978, where Clark Kent meets the hologram of his father, and Jor-El says, humans are good. They only lack the light to show them the way. And I don't know why, but that line has always stayed with me. That humans are inherently good, but that we lack the light to show us the way. And we are always looking for that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
There's been so much atrocity and absolute horrible things taking place on this planet
Hmm.
for so long that I can only imagine what the ETs must think of
I can
us.
imagine.
It's
It
embarrassing.
is. Yeah.
Uh, so I think that we can do better,
Hmm.
which is exactly what the ETs told Emily Trim. There's a
Yeah.
good way to use technology and a bad way, and you could do better,
Hmm.
which is such a nice way to say it.
Hmm.
It's because it's not berating. It's
No.
saying, listen, you could do better.
Yeah. Or you
Uh,
suck, you know.
right?
You suck so bad, you don't get out of here. No, but really. Um,
Yeah, it's disheartening because I think as an individual, we
mhm,
feel somewhat powerless
mhm.
fighting against this giant
But
machine.
that's what it's
Yep.
there to do,
Um,
though. That's exactly that belief system that they put into society. It's a Wizard of Oz again. You know, there'll be this big
yeah,
wizard that
but
we
we're
think
not
is.
powerless.
We're not powerless, but again, it's that type of thinking. And going back to
Yeah,
what we're talking about, children don't have that sense of I mean, yes, you have parents and you have to respect that, but I mean, really, children have a sense of just going for what is what they feel is right, and it's coming from a place of innocence. Sometimes they make the mistake, but it's only because of innocence, not through much so much through malice. And
one
we've
person
lost
can
that.
affect,
You
one
know
person can affect great change.
exactly.
Upton Sinclair wrote a book about the meat market and the atrocities that were occurring there and changed everything.
Yeah.
Rachel Carson, her book Silent Spring. John Lennon,
Mm-hmm.
his song Imagine
Yes.
helped ignite the peace movement.
Mm-hmm.
So one person can, and I've said this before, countries rise and fall in the actions of one person. And
Yes.
it's true.
Yes.
It might take more people to sort of join the movement, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, but we have absolute power. We have all the power of the universe
Absolutely.
within us. We're
Mm-hmm.
eternal
Mm-hmm.
beings. And one of the things ETs are trying so hard to do is wake us up to our own heritage, our own psychic abilities. Just think, Krista, what would happen if we were all telepathic,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
No.
which we could never be lied to again.
Mm-hmm. But we would
And
never be able to hurt others, as well. Like, I mean, you say we're going to get guns and and wars and do all these fake wars. We wouldn't be able to do that because people would be like, I see you coming a mile away. You know what I mean?
yep. And so that's why there's been really concerted actions to dumb down our
Mm-hmm.
telepathic abilities.
Exactly.
So if there's any advice I could give anyone, it would be to, start drinking clean water, not fluoride water,
Mm-hmm.
not genetically modified foods.
Mm-hmm.
Be very careful about the air, the water, and the food, and the environment that you subject yourself to.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes thoughts. Buddha had it right.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we have a lot of work to do.
Yes,
Love is the answer.
it is.
Move past fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is not helping
Yeah, but
anybody.
fear's a big one though. The fear, that's the one, that's the big control stick. The big boomstick is fear. And
Yeah.
fear of anything. You name it, fear. And again, it goes back to the kids. Kids don't have that same kind of fear. I mean, yes, they have fear about the boogeyman under the bed, stuff like that. Okay, but in general, they don't have the same
Fear
kind
of
of
someone who looks a little
a
different.
little different, or that kind of thing. Kids don't really have that unless they're sort of taught that sort of thing. So it sort of makes sense that if you are going to go and you are going to land, it makes sense to land in a schoolyard because by landing in a schoolyard, you might actually have a chance to affect change at a level where humans are not as corrupt and not as polluted by the thoughts and by the actions of others. So maybe that's you feel that maybe that's the reason why schoolyard UFOs are the way they are.
And we've pretty much said that throughout this
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
Uh, so I 100% think that ETs are very, very clever in their actions here. And God bless them because I think it was a really terrific way to sort of influence humanity gently. Because if let's face it, if UFOs were to come down over New York or London or Toronto or wherever,
Mm-hmm.
and just stay there, yeah, that's going to cause an upset.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not their goal, I don't think, because they certainly could have done that a million times, and they haven't.
Mm-hmm.
That's because there's a segment of the population that's going to lose their minds with fear.
Mm-hmm.
There's a segment of the population that could possibly even worship them. I don't think that that's what they want at all.
No.
So if they come down at a schoolyard and they pop out and there's little ETs, the kids are like, wow, look, oh my
So
gosh.
cool, you know.
And they, we're only kids for a very short time.
Exactly.
It feels like forever when you're
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Yeah.
But it's so amazing to see these kids all grown up and
Mm-hmm.
talking about these encounters
Mm-hmm.
and how it's influenced them.
Mm-hmm.
So and again, most people don't talk about it. Uh, there's some schoolyard cases that rest only on the testimony of one or two people, and there were hundreds of people there, and they're walking around with this. So this is one of the numbers that the cover-up has pulled over on us. Is like, oh, can't talk about this. People think I'm crazy. Uh, the cover-up has done untold damage to all of us. We're all victims of the cover-up. I
Mm-hmm.
was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought every UFO encounter could be explained as a hoax, hallucination, misperception, mental illness, or imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I was so wrong. So I think we're making progress.
Yeah.
And you don't have to watch the news anymore because we've all realized the news is propaganda,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's propped up.
and
Yeah.
and peoples are now going to shows like yours in very large numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason it's popular
Yeah.
because people recognize truth, I think, when they hear it. It's
Exactly.
got a certain like ring to it. I'm like, wow, that rings true. That's what happened to me. This isn't being
Exactly.
covered in the mainstream media.
Exactly.
Uh, so
Yeah.
it's a good time. It's a good era. Yeah, it's hard to live on Earth, but let's face it, we all chose to come here,
Yeah, it's true.
learn, from what
Yeah.
I understand, I should say.
Exactly. And then, to return with these lessons to a greater source. But yes, I think that people are coming to shows like this because they're starting to have experiences, kind of like what you pointed out. And they're also want to understand. I think that I've said to people that ask me about the show, I interact with a lot of the members by email. And a lot of people say, I'm so glad I came here because this is something that I'm feeling, I'm experiencing. I had an experience, this and that has happened to me, and I want to know where I can go to talk and to feel not like a weirdo, and to feel like I can, learn and reach out with other people's experiences as well. So it's something that I'm seeing when I connect with some of the members, is that they are going through this and they're looking for a place to be understood and to be, to be felt like they're a part of a family. And I always say that. So anybody who's a member of the Starseeds and Lightworkers Collective, or anybody's member of Quantum Portals, you're a part of a family. And we're all in this together because big changes are coming, I think, for the planet.
It's so
And
wonderful. People are
yeah.
like, oh, I found my home.
Yes.
Here's my people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm home.
It's a breath
Exactly.
of fresh air.
Exactly. Exactly. So everybody's welcome. Everybody, you're home. You're home. Come on down. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Preston, for speaking with us about this interesting topic. And I feel that this topic, even though we started off with schoolyards, we have in many ways sort of like, gone the gamut and explored different things because it's connected to other aspects in our society as well. And yes, we covered a lot of the same topics throughout, throughout the 2 hours that we were here. But, I really wanted to sort of impress upon the idea that we are definitely a part of something. We came here to this planet to have an experience, to have a human experience. But at this point in time, and this is just my belief, but I feel that at this point in time, in 2026 and especially in 2027, we are in the midst of a lot of changes for humanity. And some people look to the negative, and if people want to look at what's going on, and I mean the media is controlled, so if you want to look at the wars and all that kind of craziness and sort of plug into a lot of that negativity, go for it. But I feel that I choose to look at it from a much more positive perspective, and I feel that humans are on the path to change. And my hope is that it's going to be a positive change, and that it is going to be one of positive change in a sense that because so many people are becoming so acclimated to the idea of UFOs and acclimated to the idea that we're not alone in the universe and acclimated to the idea that no, it's not a sci-fi Independence Day type of attack type of thing, because we know that if they wanted to attack us, they'd have done so a long time ago. So I feel that the beings that are out there that we're connected with are here and want to see us change. Sort of like, you have like a younger brother and you see them getting into trouble. You want to say, look, you're the older brother, and you want to sort of steer them in the right direction, as it were. Don't go down that path. Stick to the.
I mean, it's the height of arrogance to think that there's all these people wandering around this vast universe, and they're going to come down to Earth to torture people.
Yeah.
Really, you think you're that important? Why? They have access to just an vast universe. But what a wonderful gift it is to be a part of this universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that people are waking up to this and starting to understand, like, wow, I am an immortal being.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, there are other worlds out there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, we don't have to live in squalor and misery and poverty and all of the things that we're working so hard to get through.
Mm-hmm.
We're absolutely making great progress, I think. Yeah, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and when we go diagonally, and then we fall down.
Yeah.
But we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you so much, Preston, for coming in and talking with us about your book, and people can see it here, Schoolyard UFO Encounters by Preston Dennett. So you can find that book on Amazon, and you can pick that up and read about all the interesting Schoolyard UFO Encounters that is written in those pages. And it's very, very interesting, because it's sort of an aspect of the UFO movement that we don't really talk about, but that Preston has so beautifully created a book so that we can have that. And I think it's going to go down in our annals of UFO research, so people can have access to that kind of information. So thank you, Preston, for the work that you do. And thank you for the research that you do. And thank you for being there and for helping people to better understand this movement. It's very, very noble of you. Thank you so much. And then if you want to sort of talk a bit more about some of the other work that you're doing right now. Are you working on another book at the moment?
Yeah, I'm always working on like 5 books, actually.
Okay.
But the current book I'm trying to complete right now is a sequel to Symmetry, a True UFO Adventure, about the contacts of Dolly Saffron, because her case is so extensive and she has so much information to share. The first book was kind of telling of her adventures with the ETs, her interactions, but we want to dive a little bit deeper into some of the stuff she's learned. I'm definitely going to do another book on my own out-of-body experiences. I think it's very important that people learn how to do that, because it's very illuminating and will change your life in so many ways for the better. But another book on UFOs and supernatural and all kinds of stuff. I'm a busy boy.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, now that I've heard that, haha, we'll have you back on the show for sure, and you can talk about all your different books. So rubbing my hands in glee. We'll have you back. Anyway, I want to say thank you, everybody, for being with us tonight. I want to say thank you again to Preston for being with us and for talking about his book, Schoolyard UFO Encounters. Definitely pick that up on Amazon. And we also put his information down below. So if you want to check out his website, you can check out some of those stuff that he's working on and check out his show. You have a show as well, right? The Light Gate? Yeah. You want to talk about that a bit before we sign off?
Yeah, sure. Dolly and I co-host a podcast called The Light Gate. We were very honored to have you on, Crystal. The response was tremendous.
Okay.
It airs live each Monday evening from 5 to 7 Pacific. 8 to 10 Eastern on the United Paranormal Radio Network and multiple other platforms. So yeah, thanks for coming on. It was so much
Yeah,
fun.
it was fun.
We can't wait to have you back again.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks again, Preston, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to find out more about the stuff that we're working on and to read some important articles and great articles. Don't forget to pick up Preston's book, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. So take care, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye, Preston.
Bye.